these are the answers to the backside of the 5.1 through 5.5 test review. Equations in point-slope form are given by the following equation, which you should know from practice and using in class. You're given a point and a slope. To write the equation, we'll do y minus y1, which is the same as y plus 4 in this case, minus negative 4 is y plus 4, times equals the slope times x minus the x coordinate. The second question gave 2 points, just as before. Use the 2 points to find the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, simplifies to 16 over 4, which is 4. Once you have that, you can pick either one of the 2 points and use the point-slope form along with the slope you found to find the equation of a line. Namely, 2 possible lines, y plus 6 equals 4 times x plus 1, or y minus 10 equals 4 times x minus 3. Again, y minus the y coordinate equals the slope times x minus the x coordinate, similarly below. In the story problem for this section, the information gave a trip that was $875 for the first 3 days, and then $235 for each additional day. Its directions ask you to write an equation modeling this, and then find the cost of a 7-day trip. So we think of, in this case, the total cost is the amount of money you spent on the first 3 days, plus the cost of the remainder of the trip, which will be $235 for every additional day. So the total cost is C, cost $875 for the first day, $235 for every day beyond the third. So we'll take all of the days and take away 3 to take into account that we've already spent money for the first 3 days here. So, for example, if we went for 4 days, we'd have $875 for the first 3, plus $235 for 4 minus 3, which is 1 more day. So if we let x equal the number of days in the trip, we could take this equation and simplify this and get into slope-intercept form by distributing the cost into the parentheses here and get 875 plus 235x minus, distributed to the 3 is 705. Combine the like terms and get an equation in slope-intercept form. Once you have an equation, well, x is the number of days on the trip, and part 2 asks how much it costs for a 7-day trip. So plug in 7 and get $1,815. The questions from section 5.4 ask about standard form. Recall standard form has this equation. A and B and C are just numbers. They don't necessarily represent anything about the graph directly, but they can be used to help find out. In general, when we want to write the equation with line and standard form, we'll write it in point slope first, and then we'll do some rearranging. So the first example had a problem where they gave you a point and the slope of the line, namely 1 comma negative 6, and the slope was negative 2. So we'll write the equation in point slope form first, which just like above. Distribute the slope and get negative 2x plus 2. It's an equation, we know it's in standard form when x and y are on the same side. So we want to rearrange this equation so that we get x and y on the same side. So I subtract 6 from both sides and get y equals negative 2x minus 4. And I note, for curiosity's sake, this is actually slope-intercept form. And then y and x are on opposite sides, so we add 2x to both sides to get them on the same side. And we end up with the equation in standard form, 2x plus y equals negative 4. Similarly, for the second one, I give you 2 points, just like above. let's find the slope first, then write it in point slope form. I chose 2, 9 because they're both positive numbers. And then rearrange, again, just as the previous problem. Multiply out, get the y by itself. That puts us in slope-intercept form. And then subtract the x's to get the x on y on the same side to put it in standard form. On the story problem about in this case, it says we have $96. We're trying to go on a camping trip. We want to either paddle boat or kayak. Furthermore, it asks to write an equation in standard form and then list some possible combinations of things you can afford. So if we think of what's going on, we have all the money we have to spend is going to be equal to the money we spend on the thing. So the cost of kayaking plus how many hours you kayak plus the cost of paddleboarding times the number of hours you rent it. So if we think of the cost of kayaking as $6 for every hour you kayak, I call it K, plus $8 per hour times the number of hours you paddle boat, P, that should be equal to the amount of money that you have, which is $96. So you could graph this if you like to see what it looks like. In general, the combinations of things you can do are points that are on this line and points that satisfy this. So we think of combinations of K's and P's, hours of kayaking, hours of paddle boating, that fit this equation. So we think of some extremes. Maybe start with, what if you don't paddle boat, you only kayak? So we find, think of it as the x or y, or in this case the k-intercept. Put 0 in for p. Note that if you don't paddle boat and you only kayak, then you could do 6 times the number of hours is equal to $96. Divide both sides by 6, and you could you could kayak for 16 hours. So the one combination would be 0 hours paddle boating, 16 hours kayaking. Maybe we go the other extreme. Maybe instead we don't kayak, we do all of our time paddle boating. So we plug in 0 for K, find that in this case 8P is equal to 96, divide by 8, and get P is 12. Or maybe this time, if you spend no hours kayaking, you spend 12 hours paddle boating. Well, other combinations you could get by choosing other amounts of time. So maybe I decide I want to divide my time up by, say, spending 4 hours paddle boating. So I plug in 4 for P, and I work backwards to figure out how many hours I could kayak. So plug in 4, I get this is not 36. Plug in, if I chose say 4, I could plug in 4 and get 8 times 4 is in fact not 36, but 32. Subtract 32. I get 6K is 64. Divide both sides by 6 and get 64 divided by 6. Let's see, 64 divided by 6 is the same as, let's see, 2 goes in is 32 over 3 hours, which is, what would be that? It would be 10 2/3 hours. Which is reasonable, 10 hours or 10 hours, 40 minutes kayaking. That's a reasonable amount of time. But you could pick other points that are on this line. Lastly, in section 5.5, as for parallel and perpendicular lines, key important things to remember is that parallel lines have equal slopes. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. Just a reminder, opposite reciprocals look something like these two examples. So the questions I ask might be, if I gave you a point and a line that's parallel to it, write the equation of a line that goes through a given point and parallel to some other line. Parallel, the important thing you need to know is that it's got the same slope. So we identify the slope, namely in this case, the slope of this line is 5. So the slope we want is 5. And it goes through this point. And from here, you could write your line in point slope form. Or maybe you distribute the slope, rearrange to get in slope intercept form. Or maybe instead you want it in standard form. Similarly, I could ask the same question but change the word parallel to perpendicular. So if I gave you a point and told you you want a line perpendicular to this line, to a given line, you'd identify what the slope of the given line is. And since you want a perpendicular line, you'll find the opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal in this case of negative 1/4 is flip and change the sign to 4/1 or 4. And from here, again, you're given a point, you've got a slope. You can write it in point slope form. Y minus negative 1 equals 4 times x minus negative 1. Distribute the 4, subtract the 1 again in slope intercept form, or maybe you like in standard form better. Any of the three will do.